All right, welcome everyone. Let's jump into our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at Abraham and Lot, and we've got sermons and commentaries and even a website. We're going to see what we can pull out of this story.
It really is amazing how these stories, even though they're, thousands of years old, they still kind of resonate with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, this story really kicks off with success. We've got Abraham, the patriarch. He's blessed with tons of wealth and the promise of becoming a great nation. And Lot, his nephew, he's also enjoying this incredible prosperity.
One of the sermons actually uses a verse from Proverbs to kind of warn against, stumbling when you're doing well. It's Proverbs 30:8 to 9. It says, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who's the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God.
Yeah, more money, more problems, right?
Right.
But seriously, how do we navigate prosperity without letting it corrupt us? Is it even possible to be super wealthy and stay grounded?
Yeah, I mean, this story kind of gives us a case study. They're both grappling with this immense wealth, but their reactions are very different.
Okay, so their herdsmen start having these conflicts because they just have so much livestock. The land can't even handle it all. It's like their blessings are causing a major problem.
And it forces them to make a choice. Lot picks the lush Jordan Valley. It's described as like the garden of the Lord.
Yeah, seems like a pretty logical choice. Fertile land, tons of resources.
But remember, Lot knew about Sodom and how wicked it was. He still chose to settle near the city.
So was he blinded by all the, material prosperity? Or was there something else to his decision?
That's a good question.
What are the Sodoms in our lives? Those things that look really appealing, but maybe they're compromising our values or leading us down a bad path.
It's definitely something to think about, and we're going to see Lot's choice has some lasting consequences, not just for him, but for his whole family.
Okay, so Lot is setting up camp near Sodom. What's Abraham up to?
Well, Abraham, in a show of generosity and trust, he lets Lot choose first. He moves to Hebron, and he builds an altar to the Lord immediately.
He's like, look, I trust that God will provide for me no matter where I end up.
That's exactly it. His priority isn't material wealth or the best land. It's keeping that connection with God, honoring his faith above all else.
But did he feel a little, bummed letting Lot take what seemed like the better deal?
One of the sermons talks about this as God testing Abraham's faith. These challenging situations are opportunities for him to show his trust in God's promises.
So even when it seems like he's getting, the short end of the stick, he's choosing to believe that God has a bigger plan.
That's a really powerful idea. Faith in the face of uncertainty. Where do we place our trust? Are we willing to let go of control and believe in something bigger than what we can see?
It's easy to get caught up in fear of scarcity, right?
Yeah.
But Abraham's example reminds us that sometimes the most profound blessings come from surrendering our limited perspective and trusting in a higher power.
That's a really great point. As we go further in the story, we'll see how this theme of trust plays out in some really unexpected ways.
So what happens next?
Lot's choice to settle near Sodom starts having some consequences. Remember, he knew about the city's reputation, and now he's caught up in all its wickedness. He even gets captured during a war between some kings.
Oh no, wrong place, wrong time.
It really shows how our surroundings can impact us. We might think we're immune to those negative influences. But the truth is, our environment can shape our choices, even our character.
So what happens to Lot? Does anyone come to his rescue?
Well, this is where things take a turn. Abraham hears that Lot's been captured. He doesn't even hesitate. He gathers his men and he sets out to rescue him.
Wow, talk about loyalty. He could have just walked away from the whole situation. What does this tell us about Abraham?
I think it says a lot about his character. He's not driven by judgment or resentment. He acts with compassion and a deep sense of family.
It's a lesson in forgiveness and unconditional love, I think. Even when people make mistakes or choose a different path, we can still show grace and support.
And this act of rescuing Lot, it has some deeper implications. After the battle, Abraham meets this mysterious guy named Melchizedek. He's the king of Salem and a priest of God Most High.
Okay, so who is this Melchizedek? What's the big deal about him?
Well, Melchizedek blesses Abraham, and he receives a tithe from him, a tenth of all the spoils of war.
So is this like the prototype for tithing?
It's more than just a financial transaction. Melchizedek represents a spiritual authority, something bigger than these earthly kingdoms.
He's like a symbol, almost.
Yeah, he comes out of nowhere and then disappears.
Makes you wonder about his significance.
Right.
I'd love to explore this encounter more and what it means for Abraham's relationship with God.
Let's do it. This encounter has all sorts of theological nuances. They get at the nature of blessing, covenant, and the priesthood. But we'll save that for next time.
So last time, we were talking about Abraham meeting Melchizedek, that king and priest all in one. Still trying to figure out what it all means.
Yeah, he's a figure that causes a lot of discussion. Some scholars think he might even be like a pre-incarnate Christ. Others see him as more of a symbol of a priesthood that's like beyond human lineage.
I can see that. Appearing out of nowhere, blessing Abraham,
Oh, he
taking the tithe, and then vanishing. It's like a peek into this spiritual realm that we just don't fully grasp.
Exactly. And it's in those moments, those divine intersections. That's where we often find those really deep truths. So let's unpack this encounter a little bit. The fact that Melchizedek blesses Abraham, that's huge. In ancient times, blessings were a really big deal. They were seen as like pronouncements of favor, divine empowerment.
So it's not just a polite, hey, good to see you.
No, not at all. And then there's the tithing. Abraham gives a tenth of everything to Melchizedek. It's acknowledging Melchizedek's spiritual authority and honoring God as the ultimate provider.
You mentioned earlier about some scholars seeing this as foreshadowing the priesthood. How so?
Well, the idea of a priesthood, set apart, mediating between God and humanity, that's a big theme in the Bible. Melchizedek, this priest of God Most High, he's like a prefigure of that concept. And Abraham, the patriarch, giving him a tithe, it reinforces this idea of a divinely ordained hierarchy.
It's like a model for how we should approach our relationship with God. Recognize his authority, honor him, and give back some of what we've received.
That's a really good way to put it. And this whole encounter with Melchizedek, it also highlights how important it is to seek guidance, mentorship from those who have that spiritual wisdom.
Yeah, I'm thinking about people in my own life who have been like that. Mentors, teachers, spiritual advisors. They've definitely helped me navigate some tough spots.
Those relationships are so valuable. They offer support, encouragement, and even accountability. And, like in Abraham's story, those divine encounters or connections with wise mentors, they can pop up when you least expect them.
One of the sermons talked about surrounding ourselves with people who share our values. It even quoted 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart.
It speaks to the power of community, right? Finding those people who uplift you and inspire you. We're not meant to do this alone.
But there's a warning there too, I think. We need to be careful about who we let influence us.
Absolutely. Creating boundaries, spending time with people who nourish your soul,
Yeah.
people who challenge you to be better.
So we've got this theme of being around the right people, seeking guidance, and being open to unexpected encounters, like Abraham with Melchizedek. What else can we learn from this story?
One thing that stands out to me is this idea of separation. First, you have Abraham and Lot separating because of their abundance. It's a physical separation. But then Abraham is called to separate from something much deeper. His homeland, his culture, his family.
He leaves everything behind to follow God.
And that separation becomes a key part of his journey. It reminds us that following God often means stepping outside of your comfort zone, leaving behind the familiar.
Which is tough. It's easy to want to belong, to fit in, to stay in what's comfortable.
It takes a lot of courage to choose a different path, especially when it means leaving people and places you love.
But isn't that what we're called to do as Christians? Separate ourselves from the things of this world that hold us back, to embrace a life set apart, a life lived for something bigger.
I think you're onto something really profound there. True belonging isn't about fitting in with the world. It's about aligning yourself with God's plan for you, even if it means standing out, making tough choices.
So is that what Abraham's separation represents? This willingness to give up his own comfort and security to connect more deeply with God?
Absolutely. He's willing to leave the known for the unknown, to trust that God will lead him.
And are we all on a journey of separation in some way? Letting go of old habits, limiting beliefs, relationships that don't serve us anymore?
That's a powerful way to look at it. This theme of separation isn't just an old story. It's something we all go through. A process of shedding what's holding us back, to become who we're meant to be.
So we've got this idea of separation running through Abraham's journey. It's about letting go, embracing the unknown, and trusting God. What other challenges does Abraham face?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Abraham's faith is about to be tested like never before. But we'll get into that next time.
So last time we were talking about separation in Abraham's story, separating from Lot, then from his homeland. I gotta say, I'm a little nervous about where this is going. Seems like things are about to get even tougher for him.
Yeah, you're right to be anticipating something big. This is where things take a dramatic turn for Abraham. His faith is really put to the test. We're talking about the command to sacrifice Isaac.
That's the one that always stuck with me. It's hard to even imagine, you wait years for this promised child, this heir to fulfill God's covenant, and then you're asked to give him up. It just seems impossible.
It's a story that makes us really think about faith, obedience, and what God is like. But we should look at the cultural context here. Child sacrifice, it was a thing in some cultures back then. So this command wouldn't have been as shocking to Abraham's peers as it is to us now.
So it wasn't totally out of the ordinary.
Right. But even so, the emotional weight of this command is huge. Abraham is being asked to sacrifice what's most precious to him, his son, his heir, the future of his family.
So how does Abraham respond? Does he argue? Try to bargain with
The
God?
Bible says he doesn't. He gets up early the next day, prepares everything, and sets off with Isaac.
Wow, that's both amazing and a little unsettling. His faith is incredible, but it almost seems like blind obedience. Is that what true faith should be?
That's a question people have been debating for centuries. Is blind obedience always good? Or should faith also involve critical thinking, questioning, even being willing to, dialogue with God?
I'm not sure what I think. It's complicated. I admire Abraham's surrender to God's will, but it also feels a little uncomfortable, like he's not even allowed to express his doubts.
It's important to remember that the Bible often uses stories to teach theological truths. It's not always meant to be a literal historical account. So while we can think about the ethical issues here, we should also look at the bigger message.
So what do you think that message is? What are we supposed to learn from this?
One of the main themes is this idea of substitutionary atonement. Just as Abraham is about to sacrifice Isaac, God steps in and provides a ram to be sacrificed instead.
Oh, right, the ram caught in the thicket. Abraham offers it instead of Isaac. But how does that relate to atonement?
This substitution is often seen as foreshadowing Christ's sacrifice. Just like the ram took Isaac's place, Jesus is seen as the ultimate sacrifice, taking the place of humanity and atoning for our sins.
So this Old Testament story is pointing to something bigger in the New Testament.
Exactly. It shows us that God's plan has a purpose that unfolds throughout history, and it highlights how true sacrifice involves surrender, this willingness to let go of what we love for a higher purpose.
So it's not just a physical act, but a change in our hearts, surrendering to God's will.
That's a big part of it. And this idea of surrender is all over Abraham's story. He gives up comfort, security, his home, and ultimately he's willing to give up his son. It's through these acts of surrender that his faith is really tested and strengthened.
Yeah, it's easy to have faith when things are good. But it's in those tough times, those moments of surrender, that our faith really grows.
And I think that's a powerful message for us today. We're all going to face challenges, trials, things that test our faith and what we believe in.
It's easy to get mad at God, to wonder why we're going through tough stuff. But maybe, just maybe, those challenges are actually opportunities, chances for us to grow, to become better, to understand ourselves and God more deeply.
That's a beautiful way to put it. As we wrap up our deep dive into Abraham and Lot, it's good to think about these questions in our own lives. What are we being asked to let go of? What's testing our faith? And how can we see those challenges not as roadblocks, but as chances to grow and change?
So keep thinking about those questions. Let us know what you discover as you keep exploring the story of Abraham and Lot. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic. Until then, keep exploring.